We recently grew our front-end team, which is the client teams, iOS, Android, and web. Till now, we were like less than 20. I think we doubled almost in the last couple of months. Like apart from just the challenges or the problems that we are solving, we also have a vast teenage audience to engage, right? So gamifying the app, building other experiences in the app, so that they keep coming back. They use Fampay as their preferred payments app. That itself is a big problem to solve.
Right.
It's all about delighting the customer, and lots of problems that we are solving are about that delight. If you can give that delight to customer, maybe they won't have a need of using any other platform. We want them to stay at Fampay as long as possible. What we have tried doing and what has worked for us mostly is try finding people who are very willing to learn, like who might not have that great technical background, but they have shown potential that they want to learn. I feel like at the end of the day, almost every company will have a fintech play. Right? They want to build a closed ecosystem. Like Apple has an Apple Card, and Google has a Google Pay and Google Card. Amazon has Amazon Pay. Like all these companies, payment is not their core competency, but they're all entering it. So every Ola has Ola Cash, right? All these companies have some kind of fintech play. So I think everyone is a fintech company in a sense, but they'll start adding more and more value-added services.
Hey, hi. Welcome to yet another episode of SCALER Pod. And today we have Shobhit Gupta with us, who heads engineering at Fampay. Welcome to the show,
Thank you.
Shobhit. So I'll start off with the first question that I generally ask all of my guests who have come here is, what does a day at work look like for you?
Sure.
Because a lot of people, different companies, different stages, so I get a lot of interesting answers.
Definitely.
So what about you?
Yeah, so my work or my day starts around 7. Not at work, like I usually wake up around 7 where my daughter wakes me up. She's 1.5 years old. She comes running and will wake me up. Usually as first thing I do is look at Slack, any pending messages from last night, because our team usually works pretty late. We'll get messages till 3 a.m., 4 a.m. in the night, but I try to hit the bed by 12. So there might be messages that I might have missed. So that's the first thing I do. And then I get ready for work. I reach work around 10. Usually the first person to reach work. And then I spend most of the time going through emails, any communications that I've missed, and then try to make a plan for the day, like what do I want to achieve in the day. And then people start rolling in around 11, 12, so a few meetings. Try to spend about 70% of time with engineers in some form, like maybe code reviews, design reviews, one-on-one meetings, anything we want to discuss about tech. And rest 30% of time, I'll say, is mostly working with leadership, strategizing about next steps, what we want to do, any future plans, resourcing, or brainstorming, that kind of thing. So I think that's how my day is usually. I try to write code. I've not been that successful lately, but I try to stay as close to technology as I can by doing some code reviews and design reviews.
Got it. And what's the team size at Fampay right now?
Yeah, so engineering, all of engineering, I would say be around close to 25.
Right.
Around 15 backend engineers, remaining iOS, Android, and web engineers. We recently grew our front-end team, which is the client teams, iOS, Android, and web. I think we doubled almost in the last couple of months. Till now, we were like less than 20 total engineers building the entire Fampay app. But we've been growing, and lately hired lots of client engineers and now looking for more and more backend engineers.
Right. Yeah. I'll just ask this question because it has been a topic of discussion in social media recently. But Fampay, fairly early stage company, and of course growing as well. But you have a family, you have children as well. So how do you go about with work-life balance?
Yeah, it's hard at times. It's hard. Like I have 2 kids, 5.5-year kid son and a 1.5-year-old daughter, and both are full of energy. So to match energy at home as well as work, which is like our average age at work is like 25, maybe lower. So to match energy at both places, it's a big ordeal. Like so far so good. I've been able to manage it, but it's hectic. It's hectic because our work timings are pretty late. Usually, I think I've seen that in India, it's like altogether, like usually day starts late, ends late. So I try to spend morning, a little bit of time with kids before they go to school, before I head out to work. Evenings, I try to get home before they go to sleep, so at least I can meet them once before they go to bed, but sometimes it doesn't happen. Um, so yeah, trying as best as I can. Sometimes I fail, sometimes I succeed.
Okay, okay. Um, so one of the questions that I really had in my mind to ask was about how did you end up being at Fampay? What's the
Mhm.
journey so far been like? And you have spent what 10 years in
11 years, yeah.
11 years in US. So I'd like to know how was the tech journey so far before this,
Sure,
and then I will definitely ask the question
sure,
why you have come back.
sure thing. So let me start from the very beginning. Like I started my engineering career in Allahabad. I went to NIT Allahabad for computer science studying. Um, had a blast there. Didn't focus too much on studying piece, but got a job offer at Goldman Sachs at that time. Worked here in Bangalore for 3 years at Goldman Sachs, and while working at Goldman Sachs, I worked with a bunch of smart people. Realized that I want to study more. I think there are gaps in my knowledge that I want
Right.
to fill. Like I was a generic software engineer, didn't have any specialization in any area. And at times when other people in the company were talking about things, they were talking about cutting edge tech, I felt like I have gaps I should be filling. So I went
Right.
for my master's. I decided that I want to go to master's. Went to University of Utah, Salt Lake City. Um, Studied as much or learned as much as I could. Did a little bit of machine learning, a little bit work on algorithms, and from campus got an offer at working at Microsoft. So work at Microsoft for about a year in the Windows Services team, which it was called at that time, or rather, it was called. So the exact team that I worked with was called Profile Service Team.
Okay.
So if you log into any Microsoft service, whether it's Outlook or OneDrive or any other Microsoft service, your profile information, your name, email address, photograph, everything is managed by that service. So that's the part I worked with. The project that I did there was working on integrating Microsoft accounts into Skype.
Okay.
I don't know if anyone uses Skype anymore, but at that time, Skype used to have Skype accounts and then you had Microsoft accounts. So the project that I worked on was integrating both, so you can use
Okay.
either of them to log in. Then this was up in Redmond in Washington, and I was about to get married, and my wife was working in Bay Area, so had to move to Bay Area. And at that time, Microsoft was not able to accommodate the request, so I decided to move to Amazon at that time. So work in Amazon for a bit, an Amazon payments team, or Amazon Pay, as now it's called,
Yeah. Yeah.
and built a couple of products there. Worked there for a bit, learned as much as I could. Was a great learning experience. Would highly recommend people to at least once in their career go through Amazon. Like it's a good learning experience. They give you a lot of ownership,
Right.
but it has its flaws as well as a big company. Um, and Yeah, so worked at Amazon for a bit, then decided that I need to move out, want to look at new opportunities. I also explored some opportunities inside Amazon. Nothing worked out, so went to Yahoo, and that was the biggest jump in my knowledge in my career. My manager was very supporting at Yahoo. He gave me full freedom to try new things. And as soon as I joined, he was like, "We want to improve Yahoo Mail search. Just go and do it." And I was like, "Okay, how do you want to do it?" Well, I figured it out. So I got a chance to build V1 of the whole stack, and then grew the team around me, became the lead and the manager in the same team, and was handling crazy amounts of data, crazy amounts of requests. That was my first experience with large data or big data, as they call it, and a huge amount of requests coming in. Then Yahoo was going through a turbulent time at that time
Yep.
through a Verizon acquisition. Decided it might be right time to actually look for new opportunities. My previous manager at Yahoo, he went to an incubator called Playground Global, and they were starting a new company called Essential Products. He reached out, um, asked me just come in for a lunch or something.
Essential is that Andy Rubin's phone
Correct,
company, right?
correct. That's the company. Yes. So I went and met him. They were working. So phone was already underway, but my manager was starting a new team for building a smart home speaker device, similar to Amazon Alexa or Google Home in certain respects. So he pitched me the idea. We'll be building it from scratch. You'll be the first engineering hire. Like, sounds great. Decided to jump ships, join Essential Products. Had a blast there. That was my first experience with a startup. Loved working there. Build the whole framework from scratch. Tons of services running on the device. Um, but after working there for a year and a bit, realized that we might not ship the product. We were looking for perfection, I think, in the product, not like let's ship it and then revise the product.
Right.
And I understand it's a hardware product, so there's a cost associated with the product whenever you release any version. So once I realized that, had a chat with manager that I think it's not gonna ship, and he was very appreciative. We are still in touch. We still talk to each other. So at that time, decided to join Uber. I was very um, passionate about working on some kind of a social cause. Like I thought I try to help in some regards, and this felt like a way to do it. So I joined a Uber safety team.
Okay.
The team is responsible for making sure that you're physically safe in that digital Uber world.
Okay.
Uber world. So worked on a bunch of products for improving safety at Uber. Some of them are live, some of them are pending because of COVID. They were pushed out, but they will get live soon. Again, had a blast there. Then when COVID hit, um, things practically came to a standstill at Uber. Like
Yeah.
there was you couldn't tell what will happen at Uber. No one was taking any rides. Thankfully, it's all well and good now, but at that time it was pretty scary.
Yeah.
And especially on for someone who was working on a work visa, I had to make plans. So decided to look at Facebook at that time, and WhatsApp was the only Facebook product I actually use. I haven't used, or I don't use much Instagram or Facebook. So decided to join WhatsApp. Uh, super smart team, very lean team at WhatsApp. Got a crazy amount to learn. But while I was uh, going through ramping up at WhatsApp, I think at that time itself I realized I want to move back to India.
Okay.
So there was always in the back of my mind that I want to move to India. Just life happens, timing never felt right. And again, I don't want to say COVID was a blessing, but it was a blessing in disguise because you were sitting at home, working from home. You had a lot more time at your hand.
Yeah.
And I think that made me realize that I want to move back to India.
Right.
And my wife always wanted to do that as well. And our kids were young. We realized they'll be able to acclimatize much better now than few years down the line when school and education pressure builds up.
Yeah.
So so at that time we decided to move back to India and decided to join Fampay, and that's another story why Fampay and how Fampay happened. But it's actually like I was looking at the Indian startup scene. I was always like I'm a big tech news junkie. Like I don't know how many hours a day I look at TechCrunch and gadgets. So I used to follow Indian startup scene.
Yep.
And was seeing that UPI was getting pretty big in India. How the payments ecosystem was exploding basically in India, and phone pays and Paytms were getting bigger and bigger. So fintech seemed like a very good space to try. And then I'm really passionate about things which are to do with kids and the whole mission of Fampay, which was about imparting financial literacy to kids. That really appealed to me.
Right.
Like once you have your own kids, your perspective changes in life, and I think that also helped in this case. And then met with the team, loved talking to each one of them, a bunch of very smart people. And I think through all of these factors and the personal reasons, I ended up being at Fampay.
Got it. So I'll discuss more about like how decision and then the transition of coming here happened. But like a lot of these companies that you talked about, you have worked stateside, like Microsoft,
Right.
Amazon, Yahoo, Uber, and WhatsApp. Definitely like a lot of dream companies for a lot of people,
Sure.
engineers, to someday go and work there. Would definitely like to delve a little deeper into what sort of the difference in the cultures in all of these different companies are like. What's what in terms of the work and the challenges, as well as how you go about doing things in each of these companies that you had perceived while you were there.
Right. Actually, a lot of these companies are very similar in nature. Like being a virtue of being so big, they behave very similarly in a lot of respects.
Right.
There are obviously differences. Like I have found Facebook to be the most open company in terms of communication that I have worked in all of these companies. Like it was like anything happening in Facebook, you will know. They trusted their employees a lot. So unreleased products, anything happening in any part of the company, it's very easy to figure out.
Right.
Some of these were little bit more secretive in some other big companies. And again, I understand because they like this scale of things that they were working with, they didn't want to have any leaks.
Right.
They wanted to control the narrative when they release a product,
Yeah.
rather than leaking and then press deciding what to write about them. So I think um, that's something that I'll say that was different. Like Facebook was very open compared to some of the other companies which made hardware, like Microsoft was very secretive about Xbox, and I totally get why. And same way Amazon would be secretive about Kindles and Fire TVs. And Essential was a pretty small company, so there was, I would say, more parallels with startups rather than big companies. And Yahoo was actually also fairly open. Um, yeah, I think Yahoo would be closer to Facebook. I'd say it was fairly open.
Right. About WhatsApp, I think something that obviously really I love seeing, intrigues me also is how they operate so lean, because even when they were acquired, it made a lot of news that
Right.
just, I think, 15, 20
Right,
employees.
right.
And even when they were acquired, I think they were running at a scale of more than 1 billion users.
Yeah, close
Right.
to that. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's different? Like, let's say at a place like
Right.
WhatsApp where they are running things so lean.
Couple of points I can think of. One is definitely the tech stack that they've chosen. I think they use Erlang very heavily. So Erlang is a language used mostly in telecom industry, and few chatting applications I think use Erlang. Um, WhatsApp famously, I think Signal also uses Erlang, and Discord uses Elixir, which is a variant
Elixir,
of
yeah.
Erlang. Um, so yeah, so lots of I think tech stack always helps because Erlang has a lot of constructs built into it where you don't require some of the infrastructure setup that you will need for, let's say, Java or some other language.
Yeah.
So I think that helps. Um, it I think it's also how conscious Facebook is in releasing new features.
Right.
Like you won't see WhatsApp releasing like hundreds of features a day or even a week. Like they're very
Yeah.
conscious, like
The app
very
has been the way it has been for a long time.
exactly, and that's by design.
Right.
They want the core messaging experience to stay as close to original as it was, like messaging still being the center of everything, and they just hide the new things in inside menus or inside settings, just because people who are familiar with messaging just can do message
Right.
at any point of time, and then payments and location sharing and all those things are hidden inside. So I think it's also because they're so intentional about launching new features. They don't need that army of like few thousand engineers to actually work on very very small features. They'll like a whole company will decide to work on 4 features and they'll just try to deliver that 4 features as best as they can. So
Right.
so I think it's very conscious decision to launch new features rather than just launching hundreds of new features.
Right. The other piece I'd like to, of course, talk more about is, and we were, just before we sat here, we
Right.
were discussing about the designing systems,
Yep.
especially. And you have had experience of very different systems, but all at very different
Right.
types of scale. Like, for
Right.
example,
Right.
you're talking about Yahoo.
Yeah.
So billions of email
Right.
messages, and then
Right.
sort of designing search
Yep.
around that. Again, I think Uber safety would also be like
Sure.
daily. I think millions of rides
Right.
happen on it, right?
Right.
I mean, obviously these are all very different problems, but how do you sort of say Yahoo's case, you started building something from scratch?
Yeah.
How do you go ahead and approach a problem like that where the data already is at that scale, and you have
Right.
to build
Right.
a system which, like, from day one has to operate on that scale?
Right. So it can be overwhelming when you are working at that scale already. So the approach we took at Yahoo was we built for small set of users. We identified our most loyal users who use Yahoo Mail mobile app, who were on the platform for a while and still using Yahoo effectively, and we wanted to give them the best experience first. So we identified a million such users, and now the scale suddenly gets smaller. So we want to build for these users. If these people are happy, we'll release for everybody else.
Right.
So that's how we chose our initial set of users, and then data also gets smaller because now we are dealing with 1 million users, and in fact, even releasing to 1 million users, we started to work with the company employees, which are a few thousand employees, right? Their data, how we can actually give them the best experience, and then release to 1 million users. So I think you choose the segment or set of users who you wanna experiment on, and that's what we did there. It was our Yahoo company's employees who we experimented things on, and once things started looking good, we started releasing features in a very controlled manner in production to the 1 million users and then beyond them. So we designed our whole system in such a way that we can control who it goes out to and what features they get as well. Like it was very carefully, we added feature flags in there. where maybe some people will get new version of photo search versus other people might get new version of document search versus other people might get new version of contact search. So it was all very granularly controlled, and I think that's the first thing we did, basically build that system so we can release it very granularly. And if you want to release it for one new user, we can do it very easily.
Right.
It wouldn't break our algorithms, which are dependent on percentages. Rather, we were actually doing it on per user basis.
Right.
So yeah, so I think some of the initial controls helped, and also the design that we chose eventually helped us to release it for one single user if we want to.
Got it. So, I think first time when you did a switch from a larger company to startup, and to Essential, for example, and then I'll talk about similar things that you might have experienced at Fampay, but that was a very greenfield sort of time, right? In a day zero kind of a place. And a lot of times I think engineers are also considering a switch like that.
Yeah.
Like working at a big company, it's something very exciting comes along, and then should I go, should I not go? So what were some of the main differences, going from, let's say, even Yahoo, even though your project might have been new, but still Yahoo itself has been used for, so you have to go in and build something in a framework that already exists, right? Versus something like, building actually something from scratch. So how different was the experience there?
Actually, it was less different than I thought it would be, because even at Yahoo, my manager gave me full freedom. Like, if you have to use new technologies which are not being used at Yahoo at all, go ahead and do it. So it was like a startup inside Yahoo, the one that I was working at. But yeah, so there are differences, because even though it was a startup inside a big company, you still have the backing of a big company, right? Like, if something goes wrong, there's people to fall back on, there are things to fall back on. So that's definitely different when I moved to Essential. But I think what made it easier for me is some of the people that I was going to work with. So I think people usually discount the team or the people that they'll be working with. I think that's the most important thing. It's like, tech is, you can build the tech. It's mostly the people. So my previous manager at Yahoo, he was actually who I was going to work with at Essential, and that made the transition very easy.
Right.
Like, I respected him, he respected me for what I can do, and both of us wanted to work with each other again. And when I was evaluating Essential versus Yahoo, like, being in a foreign country, I think the biggest decision comes in, like, what happens to my work visa if something goes wrong. I think other than that, I was not worried at that time. I wanted to take a chance, because that you want to do it early in your career. I think it's much easier. As you grow older, it becomes slightly harder every time to take that chance. So I think I was not worried about it. The project was very appealing. I thought I'll learn a ton, which I did. And I was going to be the first engineer to join a company, and the company was very well funded. Right, that's another thing that you look for when going for a startup. Like, they had already raised like 300 million without doing anything. I was like, if there is ever a chance, ever you want to work for a startup, this is it. Like, there's no funding issue. Andy Rubin is the CEO. Everyone knows him. Like, if before delivering a product, a company can be short-shorted, this is it. Right. So it was slightly easier decision for me than it would be, let's say, if you were joining a much smaller company with less funding. So I think it was slightly easier for me, but definitely daunting. But I think I weighed the pros against the cons. Cons was just, I might be out of job soon. And pros were, the company could hit big. I would learn a lot, get to work again with my manager, and release a brand new product in market. So the pros outweighed cons by a fair bit for me.
Got it. And now coming more towards actually like moving back, and then you're talking about, say, a work visa being on your mind, and going to a startup and all. I think that's of course, topic, very touchy topic. Also, a lot of people talk about. And then these days at Scaler and all, lots of people have aspirations. Some of our students to eventually someday go outside, and a lot of people these days, I think, I don't know, 5-6 years back, US sort of used to be like the one destination in mind. Europe, Southeast Asia have become sort of very equally weighed options these days, I see. In fact, some of the people I have very personally mentored of late, more of them have seen move to Europe now. A lot of companies like Booking, Delivery Hero and all, Deliveroo, hiring a lot of people also there. So in terms of like immigration, work visa, and sort of being away from home, from that perspective, how was your stay in USA like? And
So the stay
it's
was
been
very
fairly
good.
long, right? I mean,
Yeah,
11 years.
yeah. So stay was very good. We were fortunate to make some very good friends there.
Right.
Some of them I met in my grad school. Some of them afterwards when we were working and living. So we were very fortunate that way. Plus we were living in California. Like anyone who has lived in California, especially in Bay Area, will tell you like it's half India already.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like 50% of the people there are Indians. Like they celebrate all festivals at a much grander scale, in fact, which I'll do probably in India
Yeah,
because
last couple of times I went SF and all. I think I've seen more Indian and Chinese people on the streets
yeah,
than actually American.
without doubt, like Bay Area is like that, definitely like that. So, like we have Dandiya nights there, we have like massive Holi celebrations and
Yeah.
Diwali celebrations. So you celebrate even festivals much grander than you do here. I
Huh.
don't know whether it's because people miss it, they feel guilty, or whatever is the reason. But the so you don't like you build good relationships there. You have good friends there. Family is you definitely miss family, and um, it's a 1 day flight if they have to come in there. Like my family and my wife's family did visit us a couple of times, but you do miss them on a couple of occasions. I think that's definitely um, one thing that I'll say happened even after living there for 10 years. We never got used to it, um, and otherwise, I think living there is like California is very liberal in that sense. Like you don't feel like first of all you're in a different country. I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. It feels mostly like India. It's mostly like-minded people who are
Right.
working at various tech companies, trying to achieve the same things as you are. Um, so I like living there a lot. And anyone who wants to go and work in US, I think it's a very good place to work, especially in the tech industry. If you are in a tech industry, I hope India is getting there. India now we have more and more Indian companies which are, I would say, in terms of tech and the things that they are building, on par with some of their US counterparts. Like if you see like PhonePay, for example, it has as much market share as Google Pay, right? So Google, by the name of having Google, doesn't make it a success in India, right? So
Right.
so lots of Indian companies doing great because India has huge number of consumers. So if any company or app just builds for India itself, they have a 1 billion user base,
Yeah.
right? WhatsApp builds for everybody in the world. They have 2.5 billion. So it's not that far. So I think it was great experience living in US, and I would still encourage people who want to go there and work there. It's a great place, but I think there are a lot more opportunities in India today than they were at the time I went to US. Plus, also my motivation for going to US was because I wanted to study at that time. I really wanted to study, and masters in US was at least at that time considered a much more fruitful experience than doing a MTech in India.
Yeah.
So I think that was my reason for going, and I always wanted to come back in 2 3 years. And I said life happened, and then I just stayed there for longer than I did. I wanted to, but it was always on the cards that I wanted to come back.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Uh, so when you were thinking of coming back, though, was sort of coming and then joining a very early stage startup always the plan, or was it like you were also looking at maybe say a leadership position in a scaled up startup,
Mm-hmm.
because I mean Fampay obviously I
Yeah.
have seen like doing I think 5 million plus users and all,
Mm-hmm.
but then there also say a company like Swiggy and
Sure.
Zomato and Flipkart
Yeah.
also, right? So what was sort of going on in your mind? What kind of places you were thinking of?
Right. So when I was deciding to come back, first of all, I didn't even know how many companies would be willing to hire from US directly.
Yeah.
So I always thought this whole process will take 6 to 9 months to just to find a job in India. And but suddenly, as soon as I decided, I started getting calls from India, and I was in talks with some of these big companies you just mentioned, and I had offers from them. But when I thought about what exactly I wanted to do, I realized I might be doing some of the same things I've done in other big companies that I've worked in the Bay Area.
Right.
If I joined one of those big companies,
Hmm.
so it felt like I'll have more opportunities to learn as well as give back, help people if I join a smaller company, um, where people can learn from my experience. Plus, I can also learn how a company scales from a small to a big level because that's what I want to do at Essential. It never happened that way. But this was like another opportunity for me to see a company growing from, let's say, I don't know, 50, 60 people to maybe someday few thousands.
Right, right, right. And did you you were talking about fintech?
Hmm.
There's a lot of stuff also happening in India.
Okay.
Like e-com itself is also sort of booming. And then lots of things, like, I mean, say eating out,
Mm-hmm.
that happens in India. It's still not at the same level at what
Yeah.
happens, say, in US or even in China.
Sure.
So, I mean, there's headroom in terms of every sector,
Sure.
health,
Yeah.
e-com. What's in particular, like, fintech, that interested you?
So one thing as mentioned, it was the mission that they were working with kids and trying to get them to learn finance. Like uh, myself started investing pretty late in my life, like when I was 25, 26. I think at that time I had no idea the money was sitting in my bank account. I was not investing at all. Like if kids can learn that earlier, I think they can make much smarter decisions throughout their life. Like if I think about this, you'll see so many startup founders nowadays, 20 years old, 25 years old, and even without having that financial literacy, like if they had known about finance, if they had learned about finance earlier in their life, we might have been getting a lot more entrepreneurs and a lot more founders starting even earlier in their career. So I think just that mission that they will be working with kids, teenagers, and helping them learn finance was very appealing to me. As I said, have been following Indian tech news quite a bit, and UPI felt to me like a revelation, like a government-backed digital payment system. Um, like it was pretty like in my mind it was obvious that this will succeed. Like I don't know whether it was to people here at that time or um, maybe making it sound too trivial, but it just sounded to me like if government is backing it and everyone will start
Yeah.
using it, it's obvious that this will be big. So working on one of the platform which will help people do these payments is going to be huge. Like and looks like there are few such platforms which are already so huge.
Yeah, yeah.
And another thing that in fintech that appeals to me is not everyone has the same level of access to finance, to banking, to any financial services. Like if you think about it, even the kids, right? Like you can say they are underbanked. Like no
Hmm.
one is building anything for kids.
Hmm.
So just going after that market, that segment, which was untapped, felt like a nice opportunity or a challenging project.
Right, right,
Because if you think about kids, they're very tech savvy.
right.
They're very opinionated. Like they'll give you their feedback immediately, whether it's a good bad. They'll just immediately blurt it out. So building for that kind of audience, it's very challenging, where you get instant feedback. So I think I wanted to take that challenge,
Right.
and felt like I will have a lot of opportunity to learn in this space. And there might be numerous other spaces, but felt like this is a good space where I can learn a lot.
Interesting, interesting. Um, I think I'd definitely like to add that in India, fintech rails were very strong for a while. I mean UPI is
Yeah,
runs on sort of very similar infrastructure as IMPS was
correct.
running, and something like IMPS also outside India in a lot of developed countries,
Yeah,
like they're still running on things like wire transfer
correct,
and Swift kind of things,
correct.
which sort of compares in technology and speed to something like RTGS,
Mm-hmm.
which in India we still use for
Yeah,
generally large
yep,
transactions only, for like sending 20,000,
yep,
30,000 rupees to your
yeah,
parents or stuff like that. Even before UPI, people
yeah.
have been using something like
Sure thing,
IMPS, and
sure thing.
then that rails were there. I think that's something that people who actually move out of India, and one of the first cultural shocks I've actually seen a lot of my friends,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you move to Europe, they're like,
Yeah,
you have to write a letter and send it to a bank to do a bunch of things, and
right.
then
So,
3 4 business days is sort of the norm here,
so,
versus like minutes.
so even in US, like people think of US as like ways ahead in tech and everything, but that's not true. I think financial system in US, I would say it's usually slower in terms of transferring speeds um, than India. Like if I have to transfer, like now there have been few apps that have come up. Square has done a little bit
Yeah.
of work.
Cash App,
Zelle,
Venmo,
yeah. So
Zelle,
Square's
and
Cash and then Venmo and Zelle, the few apps have come which have some banks backing or even independent startups which have started doing transfers almost instantaneously with their own wallets,
yeah, yeah.
like a wallet concept. Um, but till like few years back, like I'll say 5 years back, uh, it would take like 3 4 days to transfer money to a friend if you want to. So the best way was to actually take out cash and give it to him if you want.
Right.
Even check deposits take time. So a lot of these things were taking a lot longer in US. And when you read about India, the instantaneous transfer happening through UPI, anyone can pay anybody. I don't need to know your phone number. I don't need to add you as a payee. I can just scan a QR code and
Right.
pay you. I think that that felt like very powerful thing to do. Like even Square Cash and few other apps have started doing QR codes, but they're not as widely accepted as UPI, as
Yeah.
ubiquitous UPI has become. So like just some scale things. Like even at Fampay, like we are a very small startup compared to big players in the industry. We are close to hitting 1 million transactions a day,
Hmm.
right? So yeah, that's just really fascinating. Like the UPI transaction happening at such a grand scale,
Right.
and to be part of this whole ecosystem, helping it move a little bit forward, I think that's very appealing to me.
Great. So would actually definitely like to delve into the challenges that you have at Fampay as
Hmm.
well, and people who watch ScalePod, all of them engineers, and then they really love to
Sure.
sort of get in the weeds of understanding. Also, I think in the last episode we had Subhash, and he was talking about how they are trying to create edge computing systems because they really need to deliver sort of last mile, like the shops, their pages need
Right.
to open on like tier 2, tier 3 cities,
Right.
opening on web browsers. Think of sort of deconstructing what at Fampay you're doing. You're saying like more than 1 million transactions a day. So first of all, what kind of transactions? It's all UPI? Is it all the cards? What kind of transactions are you doing, and what are the challenges that come with it when you have some few
Sure.
millions of users on the platform?
Sure. So yeah, so we haven't exceeded 1 million yet. We are almost there.
Okay,
Just a small correction. So yeah, we're close to
maybe by the time the episode goes out.
hope so. But yeah, we're close to 1 million transactions a day, and I think they're vastly UPI transactions. Majority of them are UPI. Some of them are card transactions. Because Fampay, we do have a card as well, but majority are UPI still because it's just much easier.
Right.
And So what has happened in the last few months, I would say, is we had 6x our transaction volume in 3 months.
Wow.
Um, and It's a dream scenario for any startup, and it is for us as well, but it comes with its own set of challenges. The system that we had built we anticipated we'll get growth, and we were slowly modifying them to handle that scale, but the scale came much quicker than
Right.
we were able to modify them. So there are lots of scaling challenges we started facing, like people who are familiar with AWS and how setup is done on AWS. We use RDS, which is the relational
The
database on
managed
AWS.
database that they
Yeah,
have, yeah.
and we use Postgres, and one of the biggest Postgres instance we can get. And every instance that you get on Postgres has a fixed number of reads and writes you can do per second.
Yeah.
Like you cannot exceed beyond a certain number. And we were very frequently hitting those limits.
Okay.
And one way is you can just keep on upgrading your database,
Yeah.
which can only get you so far. The other way is you have to reduce the reads and writes on the database.
Right.
So one of the biggest projects that we are taking on right now is actually splitting one of our big service, which actually makes that us hit that database so heavily. Like I think we have only 2 more tiers to go in RDS. We are using the third biggest RDS we can use, but that also impacts the cost. Every time we increase or upgrade the RDS instance, even though we are not using the capacity, we are not using the CPU. It's just because of reads and write per second. We have to upgrade the instance, and we double or triple the cost every time we do that. Given the current macroeconomic environment, we also want to conserve cash. So another big challenge that we are working on is keeping our AWS costs not tied to number of users. Like it should not linearly increase with users.
Yeah,
It
the
should be
non-linearity
yeah, it should be
something.
sublinear, much lower than linear. Like we internally try to use a number like we want to get to 1 rupee per MTU uh, cost. Right now we are at slightly higher than that, but that's the goal we want to get to. So there are cost cutting initiatives that are going on, and they range from things like there are lots of images that we load in our app. How to do image compression so that our data transfer costs are lower.
Right.
To what things should we cache on the CDN, what should be the TTLs on the CDN. So they are hardcore on the networking side or the infrastructure side to the code itself, like the things that we are doing in the code, what to cache in Redis, how long to cache for, should we use uh, Golang, should we use Python on our servers? Like we are a big Python shop right now,
Right.
and most of the time Python servers actually can support much less throughput or QP or request per second than any compiled language, and that's also we saw with our workloads, and we are moving towards Golang. So that's another thing that we are doing. We also started building event-driven systems in our whole setup. Till now, we were just making direct requests and responses with few asynchronous processing thrown in through Celery. But now we have started using Kafka very heavily, where
Right.
one service, if they want to send a message to another service, we send it via Kafka so that there's more reliability built into the system.
Right.
The other service, if it, for some reason, if it crashed or there was a blip in there, it can read the message whenever it's ready.
Right.
So, so a lot of these challenges have started coming up. Um, like, to give you an example, one of the things that what we are doing is we are breaking up our service that was doing authentication and a few other things into separate microservices. And one of our interns, I won't name him, I don't want people to poach him, but he's an intern and he's built that service from scratch. And it will be the highest QPS service at Fampay, period, because every request is going to go through it.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things that engineers are doing. And plus, it's a very small team still. As I said,
Right.
like 15 backend engineers working on crazy number of things. Like apart from just the challenges or the problems that we are solving, we also have a vast teenage audience to engage, right? So gamifying the app, building other experiences in the app so that they keep coming back. They use Fampay as their preferred payments app. That itself is a big problem to solve.
Right.
And a lot of our team is actually working on building new experiences, which should come out very soon. Like anyone who uses Fampay app will see massive number of experiments going out in next few months.
Right. About the teenage part, I would love to talk about. And if your users are mainly like very, very young, I think a lot of people in 15 to 20 sort of age group you have, right? So I totally understand, like from a product perspective, like how you build features and how you sort of engage people would definitely be different, geared towards younger people. Their tastes are different. Probably like they want everything in form of memes. Right. But there's also like behavior differences also, like being more impatient or how they sort of access things, what kind of computing device they're using. So what are some straight up tech level challenges also that come with sort of catering to a very young audience?
Yeah, some of the things that you just mentioned, like they are a little impatient compared to like my generation or my parents' generation. Like if let's say my father is doing a transaction on one of the platform and it fails, he would be willing to wait a couple of days, and he knows that things will revert and the money will come back if it's failed. I might have slightly lesser patience. Maybe I'll wait for a day, and the audience that we have has even lesser. And it's not just about patience. I think some of them, they don't make money, right? It's mostly the money that's given to them.
Yeah, for 500 rupees for them getting blocked even for a few hours is
exactly.
anxiety
So it's a big thing for them. So we understand that responsibility. Like just being completely honest, we haven't got it right all the time. There are cases where sometimes their money gets stuck for a couple of days, which we try to revert as soon as possible. But there are cases where we fail, and then we empathize, we understand it's a big issue, and that's what keeps us working as hard as we do. Like we want to improve that experience. Like none of our customers should be facing that anxiety. What will happen to my money? Has it gone through? Has it not gone through? So I think that's one of the big challenges. Like with the scale that we have gotten at this time, our customer support was not able to scale at the same speed.
Right.
In fact, even tech wasn't able to scale at that speed. Like we did a few things here and there, but now we are properly doing things. And same way with customer support. I think, like as I said, this is a good problem to solve. When you get so many customers, when you get so many people who are doing transactions, but we were not prepared for it at that time. And slowly and steadily, we are making progress towards making it better. But if you were to ask me right now, we are not there yet. We are trying to. So those are again some of the problems that we are trying to solve. How to do customer support better at scale. Like we employ artificial intelligence some places, we use some bots some places, but still, how do we make it better for the customer? Like it's not just about solving a ticket; it's about solving a problem. Right? How do we make it better? How do we solve those tickets better? So those are constant challenges some of our engineering team members are engaged with. How we make these. How do we give right answers quicker? How do we proactively inform our customers that something is going wrong? Like anyone who uses our app, we try. like even though it might look like our UPI goes down very often because we show a big banner that UPI services are having failures, but that's just because your money doesn't get stuck. Like if we have systems built on our side which constantly detect what is the success rate happening at
Right.
UPI right now, and if we see it goes below a certain threshold, we proactively tell people that it might get stuck right now because
Right.
we have low success rates, and it comes up more often than we want it to, but those are other challenges that we are working at. Like how can we make um, the whole let's say the skill switch which deactivates
Yeah.
UPI or which tells that UPI is not working more smart. Maybe it's only failing on certain UPI handles. Maybe it's only failing on certain networks. How can we make it smarter than it is? So it's all about delighting the customer, and lots of problems that we are solving are about that delight. If we can give that delight to customer, maybe they won't have a need of using any other platform. We want them to stay at Fampay as long as possible. Right? So
Right.
even though we advertise ourselves as a teenage app, but we don't stop people from using once you um, are, let's say, 20-year-old or 22-year-old, right? But we want them to continue using, even though a lot more app options open for them at that time. We want them to continue using Fampay. In fact, we have consciously started looking at how um, can we build things which will appeal to that audience as well. Like we were mostly targeting school kids, if you think about 11 to 18 age group,
Yeah.
and now we are looking at college kids. Like there's a big change in your lifestyle that happens when you move from school to college, and how can we cater to that?
Right.
So again, that's another set of problems that we are having. Like, so the infrastructure problems that we are solving, they are customer support problems we are solving, they are feature problems, they are building to a new TG or new age group.
Right.
All these are different segments or different areas of the company where different engineers are trying to solve those problems.
Okay. And about sort of with financial systems, the thing is, I always feel like, reliability security is like, I mean, doubly challenging
Yeah.
because, let's say even when I used to work at Zomato, I mean, order not getting received, you
Right.
take it at a very high priority. It's very important that a
Right.
customer, they're waiting for food and all. But still, it's like, I mean, food, and then they have alternate, they can just
Right.
reorder.
Right.
But versus that, what I would always feel like if somebody's money gets stuck,
Yeah.
it's sort of just way more anxiety.
Yeah.
And even more than stuck, if it's like, you have sent money, it's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
received there, but it's been deducted here.
Yeah.
So, and I think not a lot of people also realizes like when you're doing a transaction, like my bank account to your bank account via an app, there's issuer,
Correct.
vendor,
Correct.
merchant,
Correct.
receiving bank,
Yeah.
payment gateway, so many things like
Yeah.
crosses some 10 people in
Yeah.
the middle, and it just happens like a quick tick.
Yeah.
Right. But staying cognizant about these like very real world impacting reliability and security challenges, and you have at Fampay you're saying very young team also. So how do you go about doing it? Like when you're building something, let's say a new service,
Sure.
like from day one, how are you like developing the philosophy to be cognizant about these things
Right.
when building
Right.
stuff?
So you're a very young team, yes, but they are also very enthusiastic, energetic, and they want to learn as much as they can. So what we have done is any time that we are building a new service or a new feature, we ask them to write something called a TRD, which is a technical requirements document, where they
Nice.
list down the whole architecture, the problem that they are solving, any alternates considered, why they chose the way that they chose. All that is written down in that document, and then we review that document.
Got it.
So that's the first check whether something is obviously wrong. We allow or we want everyone in the team to make their own choices, decide for themselves why something is better than the other. But that's just a sanity check in case something is like, in case somebody else in the team knows about some obvious gotchas in the architecture that someone is building.
Right.
Once they have built something, there are multiple rounds of testing that the service or the feature goes through.
Right.
Developers themselves will test a lot of things on dev servers. Then we have QA teams which will test any user-facing features that we have built out. We have beta apps which we give it to all employees who can test those features. And then also when we launch something, we launch it to a very small group of people we call cohort.
Right.
Very small cohort, and we monitor what's happening there. So there are multiple checks in place to prevent any bad or big blunder from happening. But having said that, there always can be new things that maybe QA is not that aware about, or even on small audience, we are not able to detect a few things,
Right.
and things can go wrong. So when we release a new feature, we are always on point, looking at any failures that have happened. We set up various levels of alerting and monitoring on everything that we roll out. And as I said, our audience is very, very proactive in letting us know if we have messed up something. So we get inbounds as well very quickly, and not just on our tickets, even on Instagram and Twitter. People will write to us something is not working, and we have ways to roll back again if something has gone wrong. But it goes through multiple rounds of testing and reviews that hopefully very, very few bad builds go to production.
Right.
But if they do, we have chances to roll back as well.
Right. And then, like we were talking about, like, probably you're hitting some concurrency limits with
Yeah.
something like Python, moving on to a service in Go. And as features keep on increasing, you might need sort of new services,
Right,
which
right.
features did not even exist before. Um, so I'd like to learn also about how does the entire process of sort of discussing with the team and deciding that, okay, we'll set it on a different
Right.
service. Uh, how does the architectural discussion go? Then, how do you take the technical decision as to how will you
Right.
build it, and then to deployment? How does that journey look like?
Yeah. So we usually do two kinds of projects. One is product driven, and the other is engineering team driven.
Right.
Most of these service splits or new service being created usually are engineering driven, where we think this is a better architecture to do certain things. Product driven. So I'll start with product driven projects. They usually start from a PRD, which we call product requirement document. So all product managers will actually write a PRD. They'll discuss it with engineering team, design teams, QA teams, just to figure out if there are any changes required, get a feedback, what is feasible, what is not feasible, or how long will it take. Um, Once that is settled, we start with a TRD, or a technical requirement document. Um, we take a couple of days, figure out as many things as we can about the project, so there are no, we're not blindsided later on, like a couple of weeks down the line, that some things are not possible. So we try to do upfront research as much as possible, and then if a, if we are able to write a good TRD document, it's a matter of just following it. Like, you
Yeah.
don't have to do research again and again. And after that, you'll propose in the TRD document itself if you think it should be a new service or it should be a feature in an existing service. Um, the approach that we have taken to migrate or split any old Python services to Golang is we've not actively started doing it. What we do is, if a new requirement comes in, at that time we evaluate, should this be part of the old service or should we just carve out a new service now.
Right.
But we have not done any big bang migration. Let's migrate everything from Python to Go. We still have, like, I would say 60% of our code in Python and remaining 40 probably in Golang now. But we only do it when a use case arises.
Right.
And then once you write the code, you'll have multiple rounds of code reviews. QA will test it out, and then there'll be another code review. After the QA testing has been done, then the thing gets merged to a branch, which gets deployed to staging and pre-prod, and then finally it gets merged to master, which actually goes into production. So there are a fair bit of steps in between where we can catch things that are going wrong. Once the TRD is written, at that time, the developer who's working on it basically decides or proposes whether a new service should be carved out for this or whether existing service makes sense. And we leave this decision to them and to convince everybody why this should be done. And once they're able to convince everybody, they'll go ahead and start a new service or write a new service. Goes through multiple rounds of code reviews, and then gets deployed to one of our staging environments, then gets deployed to a pre-prod environment, and finally we merge it to master and goes to master deployment. But most of the time, so our engineers are not just writing that service, they are also handling it end to end. So they will be responsible for getting it deployed in production as well. We very heavily use infrastructure as code. We have built tooling where they can actually create a script or a small config, which gets deployed to AWS, creates any new infra that needed. Let's say the service needs Redis or Kafka or a database. They can set this up in a config, which will automatically create this infrastructure for them. And when they deploy it in production, they don't have to set up this infrastructure manually. So we have set up infrastructure as a code for them.
Right.
And so we use something called Pulumi, if anyone is aware. for our infrastructure as a code things, and we have created a Pulumi operator, which actually helps us achieve some of these things. Then the other set of projects are mostly engineering driven, which we try to get together once a quarter and figure out what are things that are not working as well as we expect. So these could be very tactical in nature, like things which should be quickly fixed, and these could be huge projects in nature as well, like something that we are doing right now, setting up Grafana and Prometheus for our alerting needs. Till now, we were using AWS CloudWatch for everything, but now we are generating more and more metrics because more and more transactions are happening, and we are setting up Grafana and Prometheus and a lot of other infrastructure like this. So once a quarter, we try to get this list out. Then whenever we are doing quarterly planning, we will work with product and say we need this much bandwidth at least to work on some of the projects that we have listed. And yeah, that's how our project work happens. Either it's product driven or engineering driven, and then based on use case, we decide whether a new service should be built or not.
Got it. And something I'd like to ask is because you are in this phase where things are scaling up and you're sort of transforming systems, and like you said, I think you 6x'd the volume recently,
months,
right? At a architectural or design level, what have been sort of some recent challenges that you have encountered because of this, and any stories of how you sort of overcame?
Yeah, so one of the challenges or problems that we faced a couple of months back, I can talk about, is anyone who uses Fampay would probably know. So we have raffles in our app where people participate in raffles using in-app currency that they earn by doing various activities on the platform.
Right.
And the day these raffles winners were announced, everyone who was participating in the raffle, which are hundreds of thousands of users, 100,000 users or more, will actually flood into the app, and then some of the times our app would actually crash at that time. And it was not such key we cannot handle that scale. It was the reason that the way that whole reward or raffle system was designed. Till, let's say, about 6 months back, we used to have one winner, and then nobody else would win anything. So the way we did it was we had a big config file where you can define what is the probability of a win, how many prizes do we have, like whole math behind it. And then anytime a user comes in, we'll check, we'll calculate a number for him. Does it match the probability? Should he should he be the winner or not? And then award him the prize. And because it was there were only one or two winners, what we would do is we'll take a lock on this file. And because it had, let's say it had information like we should have two winners, we'll take a lock on the file, we'll decrement the counter saying now there's only one winner allowed. And next time when another person matches the criteria, he'll be allotted that prize. In the last 6 months, what we have started doing, we have started giving non-winner rewards, which means they'll get smaller reward, not as big as a first prize raffle, but smaller prizes. So there could be like 50,000 winners now. What this means is now this file, which we were taking lock on and only two winners were there earlier, now the lock has to be taken 50,000 times. And all these users were coming on our platform almost simultaneously, because we'll send a push notification anytime a raffle winner is announced. And all of them are now waiting in queue because we have to take a lock after lock after lock. And this would actually really slow down our app and crash our app sometimes. And it used to happen quite regularly till 2 months ago, where we redid our whole reward system. So now we no longer take that lock. We actually pre-compute a lot of prizes, and we put them in a stack, and then anyone who comes in, we just give them in the order in which they come, they get a certain price. So we pre-compute lots of rewards in this case. So yeah, this is one of the examples where scale actually, or the number of rewards that we were giving, it was working fine for whatever we were doing earlier. But as soon as we started doing non-winner rewards, it basically broke everything.
So now basically doing is like pre-computing a bunch of outcomes in a stack. Correct. And in whatever order people come in, they're just picking out.
Correct. They pick up the top ones. So let's say we say there are 50,000 rewards to be given. We pre-compute 50,000 rewards, put them in a stack, and in the order in which you come, you'll get one of those rewards.
Interesting.
And we kept the probability exactly same. So we worked out the math. The probability is exactly same. The whole rewards are randomized. So it's not that first comes who gets the better price. It's all randomized. But now they are pre-computed. So we don't need to take a lock on that file because now we already have them. We know how many we have given out, how many are left. All that information is available.
Right. This is very interesting because I think like uh, thinking of it in a physical analogy, like I think like if you have like a bowl with lottery tickets, you could already have decided that which one is the winner, but then still if you people are coming in and picking it up, the randomness is still there.
Correct.
Right. And the other way you could like let people pick up and then you can mix things out and pick out a winner out of that. Like make people come in with chits and put into the bowl.
Yeah.
And if you randomly pick something out, that's sort of the older process being that.
Correct.
And then now you're like pre-computing the winner already and you're letting people pick out of that
correct.
bowl.
So yeah, to add to that analogy, like earlier, yeah, you had that bowl, and then if now we started giving 50,000 prizes and all of them come together and someone, whoever picks it up
everybody
first,
can't put their hand in the bowl at the same time.
that plus, let's say if you were saying whoever gets picked up first will be given certain prizes. Now, if 10 people put up their hand first, how do you decide the prices?
Yeah.
Right. So you have to do it one by one because if the prices get over, they move to the next price and so on. And that's what we have now said. Stand in a queue. We already have a randomized list of prices. Basically, come in any order. Whatever is at the top of the stack, you'll get that. It's still randomized, but you can come at any time.
Right. I think this is a very interesting thing is because while it's both a, technical decision to sort of scale and prevent those locks slowing down your system, but you also have to keep the product in mind as well. Like the technical transformation should not change the behavior of the product in the first place. So you have to maintain the same behavior while...
Exactly. So while even doing the TRD writing for this, like we had to do all the math to figure out that probability is not changing. Anyone who's coming, it still has the same probability of winning whatever they were winning earlier. And so because we have to keep that confidence with our users as well. Like it's like nothing has changed for them. Like it's still the same. It's only the way that we were calculating that on the back end has changed, but everything else, the whole math works out.
Right. So, at a team like you have, and a very small team, and punching above the weight, you'd want sort of your team members to have, I think, both that sort of sitting down and thinking patiently sort of capability where they can come up with a solution like this, because I mean you gave one example, but there would be multiple such things happening, and in the backdrop of that, I think Ayush was telling, and you were also saying that you're hiring as well.
Right.
So how do you go about doing that? Because I am fairly certain, because I am in this market for a lot of time, like finding people who have that, the sort of mindset to go about doing this change also would be, writing code, all of that. So how's your approach been to hiring so far?
So hiring has been hard. I won't lie about it. It's very hard. It's very difficult to find people who really want to learn and contribute. Like I think with the current macroeconomic environment, it has become slightly easier, I would say, because hiring has slowed down at lots of places. Unfortunately, some people have lost their jobs as well. So it has become slightly easier, but still it hasn't become a whole lot easier. Like there's still crazy competition. Like if we like somebody, their chances, they also have offer from 4 other places to compete with them, both in terms of compensation as well as what Fampay has to offer in terms of work-life balance or work itself. Like what I've seen is there are 2 kinds of main candidates that I've seen. One who are really motivated with money, which is totally fine, nothing wrong with that. And one who really want to do good work. They want to learn more. So I think we are able to attract those people because we can show them what our engineers have been able to do, the kind of ownership that they have. Like being such a small team means every engineer owns at least 1 or 2 microservices and constantly building new ones, which is stressful as well. But if you like that kind of stress, if you like that kind of learning opportunities, I think it could be a great place. Not saying that we don't pay well, we pay fairly well, but again, we can't be the highest paid employer in the country. We are not at that stage of our journey yet that we can compete with every company out there. But I think for the second category who are really looking for work, we appeal very well. For the first category, we try as hard as we can, but it's hard.
Right.
So what we have tried doing and what has worked for us mostly is try finding people who are very willing to learn, like who might not have that great technical background, but they have shown potential that they want to learn, and they are willing to learn. I think those have worked really well for us. Interns worked really well for us. We have tried hiring interns and converting them to full time. That has worked really well. We have been able to, like, I would say half of our team is basically they were interns at Fampay, and we converted them to full time.
Nice.
So I think that has worked really well for us, and we've been trying to build that muscle, that predictability, that every year we go to certain campuses, hire a bunch of interns, and maybe convert some of them to full time. So I think that's the approach that we are trying to go with. Otherwise, competing openly in this market is not working for us. Fortunately, unfortunately, Fampay yet is not such a big tech brand we want it to be. I think once they join Fampay, they realize the kind of work we are doing, and the kind of technical growth they can have. But from outside, it's still, we are not there yet. It's not the brand where people will just come in and apply. Everyone will apply for Fampay, like maybe a Google or a Facebook might be.
Right.
So we want to get there. Like tech is a big part of our fintech journey, and I think once they come in and talk to us, once they see what we are doing, it becomes fairly evident the kind of work that we are doing would be really appealing to a lot of people. It's just the initial inbound of candidates that has been slightly lower because again we are not that brand yet.
I think long back is a different YouTube channel I was running, and I did an episode where I had a conversation with Harjot and Chirag and with even Kush and all, and I think a bunch of interns actually had applied to Fampay back then.
Right.
A lot of those people are still
Yep,
there in your
yep.
team and have grown, and I have heard back from a lot of them that we just discovered about it because of hearing it from that episode. So nice. I think a lot of people, it's hard to, of course, for people, a lot of people just learning tech, discovering what's there in the tech industry. Not very easy to also discover startups which are
Correct.
doing challenging things.
Correct.
And finding that out is definitely difficult.
Yeah.
I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into sort of the interview process and all itself that you're going through, especially like when you're trying to judge for somebody who would be able to work with your product, understand the design. How do you go about actually trying to gauge that part? I mean, learnability is one part. I get it; it's super important. But do they understand technical design or not? How do you try to do that?
So as I said, we tend to hire a lot of interns, and at that level, usually not many people have worked with system design or designing at a scale. So it's really difficult to judge, but we check if they can figure out things from the basics.
Right.
Like we'll try to push them what happens if your database is small and you have large amounts of data that you wanna put in the database. What would you do?
Right.
And some people would come up with a response, I'll split the database, which is basically sharding.
Yeah.
So they might not know the term sharding, but whether they can get to that answer.
Right.
If we give them the right nudges, I think that tells me that they have that aptitude or that capability to actually learn, given the right mentorship.
Right.
Plus, in our interview process, we rely heavily on our assignments. So we give out one assignment, which is pretty intensive, actually. I would say like one of the most involved assignments that I've seen ever in any of the companies. But that actually gives them a true image of how the work would be when they join Fampay. Like we ask them about building a web service. We ask them to managing indices. We ask them to handle the database. We ask them even to Dockerize the whole project, containerize the project, and then so it gives them the feel of all the work that they will be doing at Fampay. Right. We don't ask any data structure algorithm questions. Like nothing against them. I know they lots of companies use them, and I know why they use them. It gives them a good standard base of questions to ask everybody, so that everyone is evaluated at the same level. Plus, shows some kind of aptitude as well. But then you really have to prepare for those interviews. Right. What we try to do is for our interviews, you don't have to prepare. If you have been doing good work, it should be a breeze for you. Right. That's the kind of interview experience we want to give. So yeah, assignment is a big part of it. We review those assignments internally very extensively, give out feedback as well, whatever we have found, so that people can improve and they can apply next time if things don't work out. And even if they work out, we'll still give them feedback on what things they can improve in the assignment. And after the assignment, usually the next technical round is about the assignment, just asking follow-up questions, things that were not clear probably in the assignment, or just why they did what they did, like kind of a TRD review.
Yeah.
And then we do another tech round, mostly based on their past experience. Like, what have they done in the past? Do they really understand what they have done? Or is it just somebody just telling them go and execute this? Mostly, I would say it's a mix of tech as well as a culture fit round.
Yeah.
And then we have a last round with one of our founders or founding team, where they mostly check for cult fit, because for us, cult fit is as important as a technical round. So and it carries the same weightage. We do a cult fit round, and then if all of those go well, we'll roll out an offer.
Right.
And like, the reason we focus so much on cult fit, it actually shows in our team as well, because like, we have crazy low attrition, I would say. Like, there's only one person who has left the team in the last 1.5 years, and he went to do his own startup.
Nice.
Like, we haven't had any attrition apart from that in the engineering team, which is pretty remarkable given the current market dynamics.
Right.
So,
Also, with young people just starting out their careers, a lot of people might not have actually worked at a company before, but they might have had side projects and all on GitHub and all.
Right.
So is that also something that you're
right. So
going through?
we definitely look at them. That definitely gives us an interest, or that definitely gives us knowledge about how passionate a person is about learning, how much they do side hustles, because that's really important for a startup, right? It's not just about doing the work that they're told to do, but would they find other problems in the company and try to solve them, right? And doing something of your own, or contributing to open source while you are studying, where you don't need to, just shows us that hustle.
Right.
That like, even though your core job is something else, you are still willing to solve some other problems, contribute to someone else, or help out somewhere else. So I think that definitely helps. But our whole process remains the same. That gives them some more brownie points for on some of the categories or some of the things that we check for. But our core interview process will still remain the same.
Makes sense. And then within the team also, like, I mean, like you were saying, you have had interns coming in and growing as the team grows. And a lot of the founding members in the team also have been, like, I think, 2020, 2021 graduates and all. It's fairly young in the industry. I'm probably asking this question to the teacher in you also, because I believe a lot of your role is sort of mentoring the team as well. And then I'd say probably asking the question on behalf of young engineers starting out in their careers, how to sort of learn to design systems better. Because I mean, one part is learning to code and then just being able to build a project, deploy it, all of that stuff is there. But once I've sort of learned how to code, I can build a project, build a REST API and everything. And then sort of the next phase in the journey is sort of being able to build systems that are made with the technical sensibility in place, that they instead of 100 people, 1,000 people come and it won't crash, right? So how would someone develop that sensibility? How do you go about doing that?
I think some of it comes from experience, definitely. And I think the second biggest part, I would say, is asking the right questions.
Right.
Like, I take interviews all the time, and I would ask someone to, let's say, design a system, and they'll like start building APIs directly without getting any constraints on how the system should behave, what are the SLAs for the system. I think that's where a little bit of experience helps. Once you start doing it and someone asks you these questions, you probably start asking them before you start anything the next time. So that's, I think, something that we have changed in the company as well. Like, with young people, they are very energetic. They want to have as much impact as they can. So they want to finish a project very quickly, move on to the next project, and have like 5 projects under their belt in few months. But I think helping them understand that it's not just about quantity, but quality as well. Like, I'll give you an example for a system design question. Even though you have some functional requirements, but gathering the non-functional requirements, like how much requests per second is it supposed to support? What should be the latency? So to give an example, let's say if I say this API latency should be 300 milliseconds, right? and the round trip network latency takes 200 milliseconds. So you have only 100 milliseconds to work with on the server side to do
Right.
anything. Now, if you have to do a read from a database and you have to do a write from a database, you have to figure out what kind of database can you use, which will support this, as well as any computation that you have to do. Right? Do you need caching somewhere? So you don't have to do that read from a database, right? So gathering these requirements actually help you narrow down um, the kind of database you can use, the kind of architecture you can use, because otherwise it's a very big ocean, right? There are so many technologies, so many databases, so many languages, frameworks which you can use. But just narrowing this down and gathering these requirements can really help you out. Let's say if you can only do 10 requests to a database concurrently, right? And each request, let's say, take 100 milliseconds, you can only do at max 100 requests at any point of time to the database. Now, if you have to support 500 requests per second, this database is not going to work. Like either you need to split it out, shard it out, you need to use a bigger database. So all these decisions can be, you can figure that out just at the design phase itself, rather than running in production, then figuring out, then doing a migration. If you just start from the right questions. So I think asking the right questions is the key, and that's the habit we are inculcating in every engineer that we hire. That before you even write first line of code, just ask the right question. Who are you building it for, and what are the requirements?
Right.
Rather than just given a task, you just go ahead and implement it. So we are trying to make everyone like a product engineer who understands the product that they're trying to build, and the constraints and the delight that we want to give to user. What is the time constraints or the request per second constraint which will delight the consumer, rather than just building it. So I think that's something I would say to all people who are trying to learn system design. Just start asking the right questions. It's not just about, can I build a tiny URL? Everyone can. I'm sure with given a little bit of coding experience they can, but are they building it for the right scale? Are they building for the right audience? Are they providing the right delight to the user? Are they returning the response in the right amount of time? So I think asking those questions upfront definitely helps narrow down the scope of your system design, and also makes the other person feel like you are thinking it through.
Right.
So you're taking a step back and thinking what you're actually building, rather than just diving straight away into the solution.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I think one last question about challenges at Fampay. Very interested in knowing, and I've talked about this with other people. Wading into fintech waters, is that it is definitely a regulatory and compliance-wise challenging domain to work with, and it can any day you can be hit with new sort of regulations and compliances, and so the tech that you have built might need to change accordingly. So keeping that in the backdrop, like this is a fairly different challenge from, I would say, just users and transaction scale.
Sure.
Right. Because they can completely change, like how do you need to store the data, or what can you do with the data, or what type of transactions you can do, cannot do, those kind of things can happen, right? So how do you build technology in an atmosphere where what you can do and cannot do, those rules can also keep changing a lot in this sort of a compliance and regulatory heavy environment?
Yeah, so there are a couple of things to that, I think. So one thing is, yes, the regulations can change, but we usually see that all the regulations tend to complement each other. Or there are a couple of categories of regulation that usually government or RBI is very strict about. Let's say we can say like money laundering is something that RBI really cares about, and they will come up with other multiple solutions to prevent any money laundering that might be happening on system. So and they really care about that customers' money should not be lost. And so if you think of these two as like guiding principles, and you build your systems making sure that these things cannot happen, there are chances that whatever new policy they're coming up with, it might be a minor tweak here and there, and you will be compliant. Because these, like there are other guiding principles, of course, which RBI has, but we feel like these two are examples of the guiding principles that we see all regulations falling into. So that's what we keep in mind when we build anything, that can something like this happen on a platform, and try to actively prevent that from happening. And like even all the recent regulations that have come up with are probably can be termed into these two broad categories. The other thing is just keep the team very like have the team being very nimble. Like if a change comes in, we can quickly adapt to it. Like even if we were not building with these key principles in mind, we can still quickly adapt. Uh, Keep our systems very decoupled so that there's a system which is keeping data, and tomorrow a regulation comes in where we cannot keep this data. Rest of our system still keeps on working. That data moves to somewhere else. We'll change the data layer. There's one file change. Data is not coming from our system, but coming from a banking system, from some other system. So it's making the systems which are very decoupled. Like every layer has its own very well-defined purpose. So in that case, if one of the layers had to be moved from our system to some other system, we can just replace that one layer and everything should work. So so we try to build the systems in that way. So it's easy to swap out one system from another if need be.
Right. That's of course. I mean, still, it'll always be work in progress all the
It
time.
is,
With
of course. Yeah. So it's never done because we don't know what new regulation might come in. But,
right.
But again, we try to be as nimble as we can and try to define or design the systems in such a way, because after a certain point of time, you can actually make educated guesses on like maybe there is some regulation might come for storing the data. Some regulation might come in on what you can do with that data. So you'll build system in such a way so that that particular regulation might not cripple your whole system. Like
Right.
we can say, okay, we'll just drop this data. We don't care about this. Maybe we are using it in offline fashion. We don't, it'll not impact anything. So try to build the systems in such a way with whatever educated guesses you can make.
Makes sense. Finally, one question, sort of looking toward the future, I would want to get your views on. I mean, one thing I really like about Fampay, and I've followed sort of the journey of Fampay also, is that uh, like if you go and talk to a lot of people in HR in companies, you'll see that mostly still now employees, when they join their first company, that's when a lot of people actually open their first bank account.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you turn 18 and you're an adult,
Right.
and when you actually start earning money,
Right.
that's when you open a bank account. That has been culturally what has been
Right.
in India, right? But it's need not be like that, of course. I mean, I had my first bank account when I was, I think, in fourth or fifth grade.
Okay.
It was there used to be a setup. You could have a under natural
Right.
guardian UNG
Right.
kind of accounts.
Right.
A lot of banks have that
Right.
facility. The reason I had that was because I won some I think scholarship or some
Sure.
physics Olympiad
Sure.
or some competition like that, and they gave out a check in my
Right.
name, right? And then my dad thought it was too much of a hassle to go to them and get a
Right.
check in my father or mother's name issued. He said, okay, you will learn to manage a bank account yourself,
Yeah.
and let's open a bank account for you. You will deposit the check in that bank account, and what you will do is, we give you some pocket money or something like that. So every month you save some of your pocket money and you can go and deposit to the bank.
Right.
So I remember, I think in sixth grade, I've probably gone to a bank and deposited even money in coins.
Sure.
And then the bank manager laughing at that and coming and
Right.
depositing coins, but he was appreciative.
Right.
But I understand that I'm probably in like
Right.
0.0001% of people who have ever opened
Right.
a bank account when they were school kids.
Right.
I think Fampay definitely, at least because now everything is digital, and what you spend your pocket money on is also probably a lot of digital stuff.
Sure.
Like maybe buying
Right.
games or
Right.
subscriptions, a
Yeah.
Spotify
Google
subscription or
Play,
stuff like
gift
that. Yeah,
cards and stuff. Yeah.
Google Play gift cards. So because that is also digital, I think it's also a sort of virgin space right now to be able to move the concept of kids getting pocket money or stuff. And then Fampay has done that, and I really like that. I mean, while I know that these days UPI transactions and all also make up a lot of volume, but the fact that, okay, kids will have a card, their parents will load money into it, like that philosophical change that they have brought upon, something I really like. So looking into the future, next few years, both in the larger fintech space and as well as like particularly financial enablement for kids and teenagers, where do you see things going? What are the new things that you are excited about?
So I think more and more banks or fintechs will probably start targeting younger audience, because it's all about long-term value, right?
Yeah.
How much LTV can you extract from them? And if you think about it, kids nowadays are very tech savvy. They are like the CTOs of the house. So right, any orders, let's say online payment, grocery deliveries, Swiggy orders, it's all kids who are doing that.
Yeah.
And so I can see more and more companies actually trying to engage that audience. Fampay is in a unique space where we already have this audience.
Right.
Like, let's say if I want to, and just hypothetically, if let's say if I want to sell something to the household, I want to, I think by some way I know how, a particular item will be good for that household. Rather than appealing to the parents who might not be on the app, who might not be using any digital platform, I'll appeal it to the kid. Does it make sense for your household? And we have that audience. So I think we are very well positioned for the future to actually tap in the audience that we have, and even help maybe other companies and other brands, if anyone needs that kind of audience, to basically directly target these kids, or not target these kids, but actually at least get into the household via these kids. Like, obviously we won't want them to make rash decisions. We'll want their parents to actually decide, but at least you can show it to the kid, maybe use product A versus product B, and then they can show their parents, this looks really cool, what do you think about this?
Right.
So I think lots of other companies will start targeting younger audience, I feel. Other than that, I think UPI is doing great. UPI will start getting more and more, like even more penetration. I think Bangalore, everyone uses UPI, but once you move out of Bangalore, the penetration is not that big. Like, I recently went to a nearby place 2-3 hours away from Bangalore, and it was still cash, right? So I think there's still places where UPI hasn't penetrated that much. So I think that will start happening more and more. And I think a lot more companies will start selling value-added services. I feel like at the end of the day, almost every company will have a fintech play, right? They want to build a closed ecosystem. Like, Apple has an Apple Card, and Google has a Google Pay and Google Card. Amazon has Amazon Pay. Like, all these companies, payment is not their core competency, but they're all entering it. So Ola has Ola Cash, right? All these companies have some kind of fintech play. So I think everyone is a fintech company in a sense, but they'll start adding more and more value-added services. Like if you see PhonePe or Paytm apps, they have insurances, they have investments, and I think any fintech player will probably start venturing into some of these fields.
Right.
So that's what I see in the next few years, everyone trying to do.
Because everything that's happening is, after all, cash flowing from one hand to
Correct.
another.
So you can do only a certain number of things with money, right? You can spend money, you can earn money, you can invest money, you can buy insurance, so there are only 5 or 6 areas where you can what you can do with money. So it makes sense for a platform to have ways to interact with each of those 5-6 areas.
Right. Awesome. So I think great to know that. I think I also sort of relate to a lot of those things, and I definitely feel like, because in India the number of people going digital native and then starting off, there a lot of people starting off the financial journey digitally itself,
right?
Like, not even using cash, like starting to get money. First time they've gotten money is digitally, and the first time they've spent is digitally.
So my son, like, he's 5.5 years old, and even though he's not eligible for a card, but I got a card on behalf of him. So I show that card to him, that this is your card, and he's super excited. Anytime any of the relatives come and they give him some money, he'll say, just put in my card. And he's so proud of that card. He shows off to his friend, and that's his entry in the financial space. Like, he doesn't care about cash anymore. It's like, what would I do with this piece of paper? Just put it in my account, right? So for him, it's all digital. So yeah, that's what the young generation will grow up with. I think they will probably not know cash as well as we have. I think for them it'll be all digital. When they see someone paying cash, they'll be like, "What's happening?"
Yeah. I'm fairly excited about that for sure. And then if more and more younger people learn about managing finances better, and I feel like, I started out a company when I was in college.
Right.
I think because of that I was forced to learn a lot about how to manage money at a organizational level scale, right? Versus that, a lot of people like how money flows, and how to leverage money to get more money or stuff like that. I think people get to learn like much later in life, like we were saying, 26, 27 years age, people learn that. But I think we would also have like more financially prudent founders also. If people at a very early stage learn to do that. And really excited to see what sort of agent of change Fampay also is in that journey, and you're very poised to do that. So thank you so much for taking out your time, sharing all of these things. Cool.